to my new kuti deep in the forest. I think I've set up a way where you can see me and hear me. That's not as easy as it sounds to coordinate both. Yesterday was Friday, the new moon of May, so the Buddhist holy day we call Uposatha again, and I usually make a video, and these are my timestamps. So this is the now 9th month I've been reporting to you like this, with these little talks, and I'll continue to do this as long as people are watching and finding it useful. But the point I like to always bring back into the foreground for reflection and maybe some attention at this time of the month, Buddhist calendar, which occurs twice, the full moon and new moon. This Uposatha, the new moon of May, precedes the next, which will be the full moon of June, which is where in Thailand we will be celebrating Wesak, the special Buddhist festival and holy day, which may have already been celebrated on the full moon of May in other parts of the world. And I'll talk about that further nearer the time. But for now, what I always like to do on the Uposatha day, as the monks are required to do, is we get together. There need to be a minimum of 4 bhikkhus. Yesterday we had 4. We seem to be back to the original 3 again today, which is very nice, going on arms round with just the 2 ajahns and myself and our novice helping us, and some lay people helping us. I'm not sure where he's gone again, the other one. But we had 4 yesterday, which is required for us to recite our monastic rules, the Patimokkha. And these are our 227 rules for the Bhikkhu. They're our training rules, and we call them rules, but I rather think of them as supports, guidelines. Essentially our supports to keep the same precepts as the lay people that support us, and those are the 5 precepts of no killing, no stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, or the taking of intoxicants. It is appropriate at this time, twice a month, to reflect on these precepts, not to judge ourselves, and certainly not each other, but this for lay people also, to reflect back on the past 15 days, or even 24 hours, and just check if you've kept those moral precepts in check, and if you haven't, then it's okay. Make a determination from now that you will. And this is really what the monks are doing when reciting the entire body of these rules. We also precede that with an admission of any neglect of those rules, offences committed, and seek advice and understanding from our nearest senior bhikkhu, or even junior bhikkhu, by way of confession, but not as you'd see that in the sense of the other religions, where one is remorseful and seeking some kind of punishment or whatever. It's more just a reflection on how we can now look to the future and do better. And of course most of these are very minor things. Any of the major rules that are broken as a monk, then it's a different issue. But we are taking this opportunity to just really reflect on what is the core foundation of this practice, and that is moral virtue that we call sila. The other parts, which form the three sections or three categories of the Noble Eightfold Path, are samadhi, which is meditation, and panya, which is wisdom. So we like to keep moral virtue, sila, practice meditation, samadhi, and develop our minds, wisdom, panya. And this is the whole practice. This is what leads us towards the development of wholesome mind states, the reduction of unwholesome mind states, and ultimately contentment. Now, I mentioned the way I see these rules as not rules. Rules is the wrong word. Rules implies something that binds you to a regulation you must not breach. Now, to some extent they are that, but they are entirely voluntary. One can, as a layperson, say, break the fifth precept of no intoxicants. You've really done no real crime there. That's not to say it could lead to other things, but it's not a morally abhorrent thing to do, to have a glass of wine, or a few, for instance. It would be a lot more serious for a bhikkhu, but nevertheless, these are rules we have in place to help us keep the core basis of sila, which is to do no harm. Do no harm, firstly, to ourselves or to any other beings. First, do no harm. This incidentally is the doctor's Hippocratic oath. Do no harm. First, do no harm. And very wise and important that is too, to understand. Because by this we are freeing ourselves from all kinds of regret, concern, worries about the past, or fears about the future, because we are in fact offering and giving the gift of harmlessness to all beings and to ourselves. And there's two ways you can treat, there's really, one needs to look at sila. So when I use the word sila, I'm talking about the 5 precepts if you are the lay Buddhist ordinarily, 8 precepts, 10 precepts, 227 precepts, or 311 precepts, it doesn't matter. Let's just call sila your code of moral virtue. What you've determined, the way you have determined to behave in all of your actions of body, speech and mind, in order that you do no harm to yourself or any other beings. Now, we can look at this in different ways, but if we look at it as restrictive, as rules, as regulations, it can become oppressive and not conducive to the development of wholesome mind states through calmness of the mind and relaxing of the body. It could lead to tension, gripping, clenching, anxiety. So one must hold things more gently than this. Now, monks, we wear a belt around this sabong, you'd call it, our lower robe or skirt, which is really no more than a piece of string and a woven piece of material. And similarly, as lay people, you would wear a belt to keep your trousers held firmly up, or your skirt, or your sabong. And as you know, if you tighten the belt really tight, we tighten our belt really tight, you know it's there, and you feel secure in that the garment is held in place securely and firmly. But it will become restrictive, constrictive, and a little uncomfortable, causing some discomfort, tension, and suffering. So if we can loosen this belt considerably, then it will become a lot more comfortable, and you may not even notice it's there. But what will happen is the garment can become loose and undone or fall down, and this is similar in the way that we look at precepts. If you hold them too tightly, they will just feel restrictive, and there is a tendency with that to fight it, rebel against them. If you hold them too loosely, then things will slip. As the garment will slip, undo, fall off, you'll move into more wholesome, unskillful actions of body, speech and mind without even knowing, and therefore not serving their purpose at all, like the belt. So we need to find an adjustment that is just right. And that is how we would treat this garment. We'd have a belt, we'd make a different hole if the holes that were there weren't in the right place. With these ropes, we adjust them, tie them up tightly, and then think, oh, that's too tight, loosen it, oh, it's too loose, until you get it just right. And this is how we must hold our precepts. Firmly, but gently. And like a pair of shoes, when they're new, they may feel okay at first, safe, protective, new, but a little uncomfortable and sore until your feet get used to them. Settle in to the material as it relaxes and molds itself around the shape of your foot, the way you step and walk, and become a natural part of your body, so as you're not aware of your shoes as you are walking. You don't continually walk around in shoes knowing, I can feel my shoes, because this would be uncomfortable. But once you put them on, you know they're there, protecting your feet. So Sila is like garments, protective wear, that is there to protect you, but not cause you discomfort and restrictiveness. I know as a young person, as a middle-aged person even, in fact quite close up until towards I became a monk, and even after I was considering becoming a monk and living in monasteries as a lay person, I was always quite against rules, establishment, feeling more free-minded of such things. But I learned very quickly how one can use them to your advantage. How? These guidelines are very much that, guidelines towards behaviour that help you conform to the community you're living in. Not in a conformist way, and the opposite being non-conformist, which would be rebelling against them, which you would find if you did, you soon would not be in that community, or if you were, you'd feel extremely uncomfortable in that community, because you would have loosened that protective wear to the extent that you were not keeping the guidelines, and overexposure, discomfort of that nature would occur. it wouldn't work. But if you really, as you tend to when you first embrace and take on these precepts, whether it's 5, 8, 10, 227 or 311, it doesn't matter. That is your choice. But 5 can feel a little difficult at first, like new shoes. But soon you'll settle into them. Now with the first 5, it's very easy to settle into them, and it should be not a problem thereafter. Admittedly, when you move up into the 8, where you can't have food in the afternoon and you can't have entertainment, it gets more difficult, because these aren't morally wrong things to do. They're just assistive guidelines, support measures towards our practice of meditation. And then with 10 precepts where you no longer have money, the use of money either, and you stay in a monastery full time, relying on the support of others, and then further into the Bhikkhu rules and the Bhikkhuni rules, then it becomes a little bit more of an adjustment and settling in process that becomes necessary. A harder pair of shoes to relax into or make comfortable. But you can. And the way one can very easily develop your attitude positively towards what can be seen as something that is immediately and firstly reacted upon as something that, oh well, I could never do that, I don't like rules, is often an attitude, a phrase you hear. And I fortunately wasn't quite like that, but certain things I thought, well, you could do it this way, it would be more efficient, through having lived in the world, in the household, worldly life, and having worked in business. The priorities are slightly different. They're more attributed and geared towards gain and avoiding loss, getting praise and avoiding blame, this kind of thing. Whereas in community life, it's more about that community life, sharing, looking after your fellow community members, whatever that community may be. So in your society, similarly, in a neighbourhood or in a work environment with teams. There is no I in team, you often hear this expression, because you must be helping other people and members of the team. And the way that is done is by you all adopting and following similar guidelines. So this is the way we must look at it, as guidelines, not rules, and as an encouragement and support towards the practice holistically. So this includes meditation, and then of course ultimately the development of the wisdom through the development of wholesome mind states and the reduction of unwholesome mind states, steadily as your practice progresses. Ultimately with the aim to become happy or free from suffering in this lifetime through establishing contentment. And it's contentment that is what is free from desire or free from these root causes of suffering, greed, hatred and delusion, that I've spoken about quite a lot in previous videos recently. And I also spoke of gratitude recently. And gratitude has helped me as a tool in developing, not only developing wholesome mind states, but dealing with aspects of the practice, both outside in the worldly life and when first living and continually whilst I live in monastic life, in a community, whether it's a monastery of this nature, which is ideal for me, just 2 other bhikkhus, or whether you're in a city monastery of over 100 monks. The same applies. We have the same rules, guidelines, but what's most important is how you perceive those rules, not terms in terms of your understanding and knowledge of them, but how you feel about them. You must feel they are supportive and they're for my benefit and my fellow community members' benefits. It's not that they're restrictive. They're holding my sabong up, my skirt up, my trousers up, they're securing this garment rather than being loose and allowing it to fall. But not in an uncomfortable way. And gratitude, which I was talking about in the last video, I found to be this useful tool, again in this respect also. Because what can we really give to ourselves? How can we help ourselves? It's okay with dana, which is what we call giving, which is a very meritorious activity towards developing wholesome mind states. We can give of ourselves, time with service. We can give knowledge. You can talk to people by sharing the Dharma with them. And you can give food or money. In our case, for monks, we only require food, our shelter, our robes, our clothing, and basic medicine. We are fully reliant on lay people for the support of these 4 main requisites. And we appreciate this. And we have gratitude for this. But what can we give ourselves? What can I give me? I can't go out and buy myself something and say, oh, well, thank you, Phra Dan, that's nice. Because we don't have money and we're not allowed to do so. But even so, it wouldn't be right. But what we can all, you can go and buy yourself something, but it's not really giving yourself something. But what we can have gratitude to ourselves for is keeping the precepts. Even just keeping one of the 5 precepts. Even if it's for just 1 day or half a day. Have gratitude for that. When you have gratitude for that, so I did not steal anything for half a day, or I did not kill any living beings for half a day. When you can develop some gratitude for that seemingly tiny thing, then it gives you some encouragement, it gives you praise, a pat on the back, to assist you and help you towards keeping the other precepts. Slowly, gradually, with practice, but surely and steadily. When you're developing gratitude, you're rewarding yourself for being good, and you are in turn getting an immediately rewarding payback. You're not keeping the precepts for reward or for payback, but through gratitude to yourself for, I'm grateful to myself, I'm saying it, you don't need to say this, but this is to explain it. I'm grateful to myself for not killing today, for not stealing today, for not engaging in sexual misconduct today, for not lying today, and for not taking any intoxicants today. You can honestly, just saying that, feel the gratitude, because you know the benefits. Even if you want to do some of those things, and you're having to try hard not to do them, by not having done them for that period of time, however short, you have a feeling of gratitude, which in turn gives you a feeling of well-being and contentment with yourself, your behavior, how you have improved in that time by just adhering to those basic rules that you determined to keep. So this gratitude becomes a very important way to reflect, assist with your reflection, and also give you energy, motivation, enthusiasm, and additional determination to not only keep the precepts you're already managing to keep, but to go on and keep further precepts. The same applies when in terms of going into monastic life, or even with yourselves. If you want to, say, cut down on something, whether it's an overindulgence or you just feel that maybe you could benefit from having less exuberant tastes. Maybe you've been someone who collects a whole collection of designer shoes and designer belts, as we're talking about belts and shoes today. And you may realize at some point in your life that to have Armani, Gucci, Dolce & Gabbana and all of these different belts and all of these different shoes is a little unnecessary. You really only need one pair of shoes, maybe two. You only really need one belt, maybe two. They're purely functional things after all. But to give up those things is what we call nekama in the Pali word, nekama, which is renunciation. And when we become monks, we have to give up everything, literally. Our friends, our family, our homes, our jobs, our money, our names even. Cut all our hair off, no clothes anymore, and just rely on what other people have to offer us. Very basic necessities. This hut where I live now, deep in this forest, which is provided by nature, and this hut by the lay people. The food, one meal a day. These robes, and any basic medicine requirements that I may need. It's a lot of renunciation, but by having gratitude to oneself for having given just one thing up. So I was talking to somebody, I was asked about, somebody was talking to me about their giving up various problematical things, intoxicant things like drugs and alcohol and whatever, and cigarettes and things. And I said, look, be kind to yourself, take it easy. Just, if you're planning to give all these things up, don't do it all at once. Just give up one thing. And when you've really sort of broken the back of that addiction, then you can think about the next. And then at least the others will keep you going to some extent whilst you're breaking the back of that particular addiction, one thing at a time. And then you will find, if you have gratitude to yourself for having successfully broken that addiction, because this is all you're doing, you're breaking a cycle with addiction. There is another video about that on here, so I won't go into it in detail. But gratitude can also help with this. It helps with renunciation. In fact, gratitude helps with all of these developments of wholesome mind states, and also all of our moral actions of body, speech and mind. When you've spoken kindly only to people during a day and not had harsh words with anybody, you can have gratitude to yourself for that. And these feelings of gratitude give you encouragement. So this person, we haven't finished the conversation, but I was just suggesting, one thing at a time, and with the precepts also. We don't need to, if you're really far from keeping the 5 precepts, then have gratitude for the ones you are keeping, and be firmly established in those before you move on to the next. And very soon you'll build a momentum of achieving having gratitude, and then achieving more, having more gratitude, and then achieving more and more and having more and more gratitude. And it almost becomes like a snowballing effect. And soon you can't give up enough. I got into a giving away situation and giving up. I'm still a little bit like that. I have relished this opportunity to move into this kuti because I was able to make sure I had got rid of anything I might have acquired since I'd been here, which happened to be absolutely nothing at all, just a couple of empty boxes that some things had arrived in to do with this. Some kind people have sent little microphones and leads like that and things. So, it's, but sometimes we do acquire things we don't even notice, and giving something up you'll find when you've rewarded yourself with gratitude, you'll find yourself looking for something else to give up. So it has a reversing effect on your aversion towards renunciation. It makes you want to renunciate. It makes you want to keep precepts. It makes you want to have more rules, more precepts, because you know the rewards you get back. And after all, the reason we break rules, the reason we take intoxicants, or the reason we buy things we don't need, is because we get a reward through dopamine or endorphin, these things in the mind, chemical, hormonal things in our bodies, which give us a feeling of pleasure, a feeling of achievement, a result. And those things are what keep us going back in that cycle of addiction to have more. So one way to break that cycle of addiction is just with this gratitude for having not done something. So this gentleman said about cigarettes, I said, don't give up cigarettes. I said, for a start, firstly, cigarettes are not morally abhorrent. I'm not saying it's a good thing to smoke, but they're not intoxicants. They do not, you can drive and smoke, you can fly an aeroplane and smoke, not necessarily at the same time, but after the effects of smoking, you can still drive, fly an aeroplane, perform brain surgery, and none of these things will be affected by the fact you've smoked a cigarette or two or a whole packet. It doesn't matter. It's not going to affect your mindfulness, your ability to concentrate, or your behavioural patterns, as would alcohol or marijuana or anything that we consider an intoxicant. And the same applies for coffee. They might be stimulants, but that's an entirely different thing. So therefore, they do not come under the fifth precept of intoxicants. So if you have other things that do, then give those up first and leave smoking till last. In fact, many monks in Thailand smoke cigarettes. It's unusual to see when you see it from a Western point of view, but because it doesn't break the fifth precept. And it's still in rural areas of many parts of the world, you see, acceptable to eat betel nut and smoke cigarettes and things, because they do have, strangely enough, various secondary health benefits. I mean, for instance, if you smoke, you have a lot less problem with mosquitoes, which if they were carrying malaria, this could save your life. Chewing betel nut, I can't imagine what the benefits of that are, but many people do that in northeast Thailand and in India for cultural reasons. But regardless of that, one thing at a time and being kind to yourself is the way to approach releasing yourself from the trap of addiction. And the way to do it is through gratitude. And somebody also has asked me about, I'm not sure I understood the question, but how do I relate gratitude to independence? Now, I could interpret this question two ways, and both ways is useful, so I'm going to explain. Firstly, the obvious way is, I think maybe the question could refer to, well, if you have to rely, however grateful you are, if you're relying on other people to give you your food, you can't just go and get your own thing, make your own food, cook your own food, or even go to the extent of growing it, harvesting it, making it, cooking it, and preparing it and eating it yourself right from scratch, yes? If you are relying on other people all the time, do you have regret that you've lost that independence? This is something that I struggled with at first, yes. Thinking as a very independent person previously, yeah, no, I don't want to rely on everything being provided by other people. And then from basic things like food, and then laterly in the practice, arranging transport, flight tickets for going places to get visas and, all kinds of different things like that. I'd rather do it myself, I feel independent. Firstly, there is no such thing. Now, I've tried the Louis Theroux not Louis Theroux, he's a journalist, Thoreau, what's his full name? Anyway, he was a man, Walden's Pond is a very, very good book to read. Not really, I'd say it's not to do with Buddhism. It really is a lot to do with Buddhism, although that's not the idea. But this man, he just lived on his own in the forest. I've tried this. I've gone and lived on my own in the forest before I was even practicing Buddhism or really knew much about Buddhism. Tried this nomadic way of life, living freely and with no ties to society. You are always reliant on someone or something. You are never wholly free. You need to be on land that's either owned by someone, or if it's owned by you, you have responsibilities attached to that. So there is no true independence that we see and think of it as that. However, in exchange for what you're giving, you are, in exchange for what you are being given, you are giving equally back by giving those people the opportunity to give. So they have equal amount of gratitude for being able to give to you, as you have gratitude for receiving what you are given. And that is the whole point. You are not losing independence, you are gaining independence, because you are gaining the independence to double up on your gratitude by sharing your gratitude with others, and also making you are not able to be grateful to yourself for material things, because you've had to work to pay for them, or work to make them, grow them, cook them. You're just getting an exchange of work for transaction. Generally in society, money is required, so there is always this tie, which is not true independence. Now, I'm not sure whether I finished saying, but the only thing we can give to ourselves, and that we can be truly grateful to ourselves for, is keeping precepts. Yes, I think I did cover that. So this was what I was referring to in terms of gratitude. And the other aspect of giving up independence, what was I thinking about when I was reading that? I might ask you also to maybe elaborate yourself, who the person who knows, you know who I'm talking about, who asked this question. Maybe you could send another comment elaborating on what you meant exactly. But gratitude, independence. Yeah, I mean, the gratitude implies another person, and this could be the breach of independence. But that is an incorrect implication, because gratitude is as much something you can have towards yourself as to others. And gratitude towards yourself is actually one of the truest forms of independence, because gratitude towards yourself is contentment. Gratitude for everything as it is, without judgment and without desire for it to being another way, is pure contentment, which is happiness, results in happiness. It is freedom from desire. So this is a long way, if not achieving freedom from suffering in this lifetime. And that is independence. And this is the only real independence there is. I mean, ultimately one could describe nibbana as independence, because it is freedom from samsara, freedom from rebirth, freedom from greed, hatred, delusion, the root causes of desire and the traps, the ties, the fetters to samsara. This is samsara, is worldly life that we're reborn into, either moment by moment or in future lifetimes. But in moment by moment you can see the example. You eat food, and sooner or later you're hungry again. So you need to get more food. If you're having to work to earn money to pay for that food, you have this cycle, yes? Or if you just had food given to you, you could be grateful for being given the food, and those people could be grateful for being able to give you the food, and there needs to be some kind of exchange, some kind of support, mutual benefit other than just gratitude. But gratitude is the core thing. Gratitude is the main thing. Gratitude is the motivation, the support, the fuel for goodness. And with that in place, then there's support that can be given back. So lay people feed monks, monks feed lay people. What do they feed them? They feed them with the Dharma. They feed them with mental food, food for thought. They assist with certain traditional cultural things that are necessary in different regions and parts of the world, but primarily it is the helping teach, not necessarily by words or by writing books or by giving talks, but by living the example as set by the Buddha, purely under those 227 rules if you're a bhikkhu, or 311 as a bhikkhuni, living purely by those rules as an example to the lay people, whom can then see it is possible. Because it's all well and good for people to say, well, if you kept all of these rules, you'd be happy and content. But that isn't giving you anyone an example. But when you're in a country where there's something like, I think, 250,000 or 300,000 monks, a lot of them living fully by these rules in the forest like this, it is a wonderful example to lay people whom are very grateful to be able to give them their basic necessities, their food, shelter, clothing and medicine, just to have that example in their presence of an alternative way of life. You all watch videos, maybe like this or like others, that you find inspiring, not because it's something you're going to go and do tomorrow. Maybe someone's living on a yacht and travelling around the world, seemingly independent of everything, or somebody climbs mountains, or they go on long walks through deserts, or they're a monk living in a forest. But you find these things inspiring, not that you're necessarily going to do them yourself tomorrow, but it's that inspiration that spurs you on in your daily life and gives you encouragement. So you have gratitude for being able to see, hear, watch those things, and then put little aspects of that into your daily practice. So I don't know how long I've been speaking for, again, not too organised, but I ought to bring it to a bit of a close, and I will expand on this next time, but continuing with this theme of gratitude for a while, because it does come back into every aspect of the Dharma and is not so often talked about as a tool, a method that one can use to improve on those aspects of the training side towards this practice, holistic practice of sila, samadhi and panya. So on this day after Uposatha, I was checking the microphone. I have a different wiring situation. Sorry. On this day after Uposatha, and many blessings to you. I hope you can find something useful in this talk today. And if you do, then you can use it. If it's not useful, then just forget about it. And please share with your friends, family, colleagues, if you feel it appropriate. I mean, I'll remind you, there's no adverts in these videos anymore, so hopefully that's a bit better. And I will, no doubt, be talking to you again very soon. Thank you for watching.